peace, and power. Welcome to another study session, another series, We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Kimba Jordan of We Charge Colonialism, host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. And I will be joined by Frank shortly, my compadre, who's running a little late, but he'll be here as well. And We Charge Colonialism Media. We use this platform to raise the contradictions that exist under colonial capitalism for African people as we continue to raise the consciousness of our position and conditions around the globe so that we can take the necessary steps to overturn these contradictions. We will continue to charge colonialism until African people are free, until we're liberated from the continuing economic and political oppression and exploitation. So this is We Charge Colonialism Podcast Book Club. We're going to continue to read Set the World on Fire in the second half of this podcast. We usually begin by going through our weekly roundup as we look at different stories around the globe as it pertains to African people. But before we get into that, what I want to do is to do a little housekeeping. Make sure you like and share the podcast. Get it so we can get as many people to be a part of this experience and these discussions as possible. Going up against the colonial media and machine is a difficult thing because they have the resources and they have years of being able to get ahead with the resources and control over the media by marginalizing and limiting what African people can do within the colony. So now we're at a position, or we're in a situation where we're sort of playing catch up, but the objective isn't catch up within the system. You know, the objective is to separate from the colonial enterprise. So I just want to put that out there. But while we're in the system and having to compete with them within the system, as far as compete with the minds of African people, of Black people, then we're going to need as much support, as many people behind us as possible. Hey, what's going on, Brother Frank? I see a black screen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm still facing difficulty. At least you can hear me today. Yeah,
still having the colonizers are still messing with you, man.
You know what? They damaged my whole computer. They messed it up. They hijack it. Like I took it somewhere. I took it to 3 different places, man. And then the last error.
Yeah.
He's a Chinese guy, so he actually told me, "Look, man, your whole computer got hacked." So,
man,
yeah, he have to change the whole thing and then put in different software. So now I'm using a webcam. So I don't know why the webcam doesn't want to come out, but
okay.
They messed it up, man. Like I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, hey, yo, those Sundays, man. Because even when I see you on Sundays, I was like, man, you know, Frank don't hold no punches, man. He better be careful. Yo, it's we're laughing. It's not funny, man, but
no,
it's definitely
it is, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. But we gotta continue. It's crazy because that's the message I'm putting out there now. I see you. Oh, we got you. Ain't no stopping us now, man. Yeah, like this message that we put out. We're under the radar. Kind of under the radar right now. But the more support that we get, and the more people that begin to tune in and listen to what we have to say, the more of a threat we will become to the system. You know what I'm saying? Those people who are pulling the strings. That's how it is. But the power is in the people. So as long as we get the support, like if they can mess with us now, there's not going to be too much hell, that's going to be given because of we don't have that huge following. But that's why it's important that we get the people behind it. So if there is an attack, we can get the support of the masses.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue to grind it out, man. We're gonna get there for sure. Uh, so let's get into it, man. Like we're gonna do our weekly roundup. But before I get into the weekly roundup, let me definitely uh, do a promo for the Malcolm X symposium that is happening less than 2 weeks from that. From that, oh no, what is about 2 weeks? November 10th, man. Let me see. Time is moving. Yeah, I think it's less than 2 weeks from now. 1 or 2 weeks. I can say it's about 2 weeks. But the Malcolm X Symposium honoring 60 years of the message to the grassroots speech. Make sure you guys are seeing my screen. Yes, yes. So you want to? I'm going to put the link to the registration in the chat so you guys can register for that. If you're in Boston, in the area, make sure that you are there. And even if you're not in the area, make sure that you're there. Reserve a ticket to get into Boston that November the 10th, whether plane, boat, bus, train, whatever you have to do. Make sure you're there. It's going to be a powerful program. Starts at 1 p.m. on November the 10th, honoring Malcolm X in this speech, and also sort of examining the time that Malcolm spent incarcerated in Massachusetts for about 5 to 6 years, and looking at his time there, and Malcolm made we all, if familiar with his story, made a serious transformation when he was incarcerated, and and he came out the Malcolm that we know now. Sort of like that seed was planted during this time of incarceration, as he became conscious of the contradictions within white America, and what it really meant to be a black person in America, and an African person, and he no longer wanted to go along with the colonial enterprise, and he set out for the rest of his life uh, to raise the consciousness of black people so that we can separate ourselves from the system of oppression and exploitation. And it's a reason why we may hear of Malcolm, because they can't silence Malcolm. He was just too powerful of a figure, but they don't want us to be familiar with his ideas. They don't want us to like study his ideas and to embody those ideas, because what that may mean for black people in America. And that means taking on a new program to liberate ourselves from the system. He pointed out the serious contradictions of white America and just the European in general. So again, I'm going to put this link in there. I could talk about Malcolm all day, but I'm going to stay focused. Make sure that you register. Put that in the chat. Ooh. And I'm gonna pass it to you, Frank, and let you. Are you ready to jump into your story? You're on mute.
Yeah, sure. So my story is on Libya. It just some kind of article that came out about their stand on Israel and Gaza, and some of the measure that they are taking against the West. My question to them is, oh, it's not here. Okay, hold on. I gotta go back. I thought I had it up here. All right, let me get back to my email. Sorry, guys. Let me get back to my email and get it out. I thought I pulled it out. Oh. Yeah, this new camera thing gonna give me tough time.
And while you're pulling that up, want to just let people know again, like and share. And if this is your first time being here on our channel, subscribe to the channel. We are We Charge Colonialism. Also visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org.
All right, so this is an article from Libya with their stand on Israel and Gaza, and some of the measures that they are taking against the United States, UK, and France. Let's say the United States, UK, France, and Italy. So my question here to them is, why at this time they are now taking measure when, since the death of Gaddafi, since the murder or the slaughtering of Gaddafi by the United States and NATO, they did not take any action against the United States, or they did not take any action against Asia or Europe or France or Italy. So why this time around they are taking action against Asia or against the United States, that they want to put embargo on their oil, or they want to ban their oil from coming to Europe or from coming to America? So does that mean that even they themselves, the Libyans themselves, they were part of the murdering of Gaddafi and the destruction of Libya? So this is what it said here. Libya Eastern-based House of Representatives has called for the immediate exit of ambassadors supporting Israel in extract on the Gaza Strip, and demanded that Libya oil exports to these same countries be heightened, according to the Turkish and Libyan media report. We demand the government halt oil and gas export to countries supporting Israel in case the Israeli massacre are not stopped. Parliamentary spokesman Abdullah said in a statement on Wednesday. Specifically, Libyan Eastern-based parliament condemned support for Israel concerning the US, the UK, France, and Italy, calling the conflict a genocide by the US and the West against disarmed people on a blockade. The statement coming out of Eastern Benghazi, which hosts Libya rival government, came on the same day the UN officials are visiting Tripoli, the western seat of Libya government of national accord. So let me take this out as we discuss this. So this is basically the Libyan authority, but specifically in a western part of Libya, where you have Western supporter, or where you have American base, Western base, okay, where they control the government of Libya. So this is where this statement is coming from. So with the destruction of Libya and killing of Gaddafi and many innocent Libyans being killed, murdered by the United States and NATO, the Libyan authority did not take action, or the African authority did not take action. Even up to now, Africans are still dying as a result of Obama killing Gaddafi, as a result of Obama killing many Libyans, as a result of many Libyan blood on Obama and Clinton hands and the Western hands. So are they saying that is not to say the people of Gaza or Palestine, their life doesn't matter? Their life matter as much as Libyan, as much as African. The question here is, why this time around they are coming to ban oil from coming to the US or from coming to Europe. So does that mean they themselves, they were part of the destruction and the killing of Gaddafi? That's why they sat down there. Since the death of Gaddafi in 2011, America have manufactured, have looted the oil of Libya and brought it to America and put it into politician banks' account, okay, exploit the oil of Libya and taking it to Europe and putting it in the bank of politicians, while the common people in Libya, are suffering and dying, and up to now, Obama cannot come out to do anything. But why are they coming to say they are banning the oil from being exported to America and Europe when the Libyans themselves, since the death of Gaddafi, they have never, ever, okay, have a taste of their oil like under Gaddafi? But under the American democracy, under the American democracy in Libya, the Libyan oil have been looted, taken to America and Europe by Obama and Hillary Clinton and the NATO nation. So to the Libyan authority, why this time around, you are coming to say you want to ban the oil? Now, it is a good thing to ban it because even Israel herself, they are murderers, they are killers. Okay, so your decision to ban the oil from coming, all right, to America or to Europe is late, because you should have done the same thing when America supported the, how they call it, or the reinstatement of Bazoum. When America supported, okay, the bumping of Niger, when they supported for war to go in Niger, when they did not have any regard for the Nigerian. And up to now, they are still saying they want to reinstill Bazoum, when majority of the Nigerian and Africans are saying they do not want Western control, they do not want Bazoum to be reinstilled. Why didn't you come out to say we are going to ban our oil from coming to Europe and America? Because these people, they do not support the progress, the independence, the self-determination of African and the African continent. But why are you coming when the same people, okay, who are against Africans, when the same people are the one happy for the torturing, the slaughtering of people in Gaza and Palestine? Don't you think the slaughtering of Africa and the destruction of Africa is an entertainment to these people? So why, when it is actually Africans, we don't make move, we don't make decision, but when it comes to outsider, then that's the time we want to make move, we want to make decision, we want to either we are powerful, we want to either we have voice or we have voices. But when it comes to Africans, immediately we pay blunt ear, and then if we even allow the Westerners, the imperialists, to come and exploit us and destroy us and kill us. Your action against Israel or against the West, I'm not saying I'm against it, but equally so, do the same thing to them when it comes to Africans' interests, when it comes to Africa, when it comes to Black people. Do the same thing, take the same action, because the destruction, the looting, the killing of African is an entertainment to the West.
Yeah, I think you I appreciate the story. I think you like laid it out really, really clear as far as like what the contradiction is here. And it's kind of going to lead into another serious contradiction with those people who allegiance is not with Africa and African people. They may be in Africa, but they're working against the interests of African nation building, African unity. And, I'm going to talk about in a second Sudan. But, with your story, we have to like seriously look at it like, who are these people where their allegiance is lying, or who is it lying with. And a lot of these people, they see their history going back to what is now the Middle East, what they call the Middle East now, and their ancestry being those people who are Arab and not necessarily the indigenous African people. Even if they identify as Africans today, when they look at their history, their shared history, they're going to go outside of the continent, and that's something that we have to be very, conscious of, because these are people who, when we're looking at the genocides that are taking place against those African people, the indigenous people of that land, um, it's being committed by people who don't see themselves see themselves as part of the movement to liberate Africa from colonialism. So when we talk about African internationalism or Pan-Africanism, a lot of these people who are in Africa, whether they're Europeans or identify as Arab, they don't see themselves as a part of that movement. So, I think this is a important story, and something that we need to understand too is just like when it comes to African nation building, we don't need unanimity or homogeneity to have African nationhood. There's going to be people that are on the continent and in the diaspora that may even identify as African, who are not in unity with the movement to bring African people together, to destroy imperialism and colonialism. But those people who unify around this idea of African nation building, those are the people that we work with and build with. And those are people who are going to be a part of this future of, the African nation. So, appreciate this story. It kind of ties in. Did you want to say anything else to it? Because I kind of want to connect it to what I'm going to be speaking about.
Now we can go ahead.
Yeah, let me share, because I'm talking about the United Arab Emirates and their funding uh, uh, of the conflict that's happening in Sudan. And there's a civil war that's happening between the Sudan government and the RSF forces, who previously were the Janjaweed, who created this militia, who created who created the RSF, this military, I guess you could say, force that is looking to overthrow the current government of Sudan. And the RSF is being funded by the United Arab Emirates, who sort of denying that they're funding either side, and that they're there only um, for aid. Let me share my screen. All right, so I'm gonna pull this story up. They're only there for like aid and to to help out with those people who are becoming refugees, or people who are suffering as a result of this civil war. So they're only there for that reason and no other reason. But there has been some intelligence to say that they're doing more than that, which isn't far fetched, because they have a economic interest in Africa, not just Sudan, but in all of Africa, and it's something that we have to be very conscious of. And these are people, again, that do not see their history, their present situation, and their destiny. Their future is tied with the indigenous African people of that land. So, talking peace in Sudan, the UAE secretly fuels the fight from a remote air base in Chad. The Emirates is giving arms and medical treatment to fighters on one side in Sudan's worsening war, officials say. Under the guise of saving refugees, the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, is running an elaborate covert operation to back one side in Sudan's spiraling war, supplying powerful weapons and drones, treating injured fighters, and airlifting the most serious cases to one of its military hospitals, according to a dozen current and former officials from the United States, Europe, and several African countries. The operation is based at an airfield and a hospital in a remote town across the Sudanese border in Chad, where cargo planes from the Emirates have been landing on a near daily basis since June, according to satellite imagery and the officials who spoke on the basis of anonymity to discuss sensitive intelligence. And the latest example of how the Emirates, an American ally in the Persian Gulf, has been using its vast wealth and sophisticated armory to position itself as a key player and sometimes kingmaker across Africa. In Sudan, the evidence suggests it is backing the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, a powerful paramilitary group that has been linked to the Russian mercenary group Wagner and accused of atrocities. The RSF has been battling the nation's regular military in a civil war that has left 5,000 civilians dead and displaced more than 4 million people since April. And if you have been following the channel, I've been speaking on what's happening in Sudan. So you can, if you haven't seen those podcasts, definitely go back and check those out. But the RSF, who again, as I mentioned earlier, was the Janjaweed. I'm talking about the people, these Arabs who continue to target non-Arabs. And I'm not making, I know it probably sounds like I'm making this an African and Arab thing, but they're making it an African and Arab thing, though. It's not me. I'm just reporting what's happening. And they're targeting non-Arabs, quote unquote, non-Arabs, right? And these are the same people who were committing the atrocities, the genocide, I should say, against the indigenous African people of that territory, who now had to create their own nation, I think in 2011-12, South Sudan. But there's still Africans who are indigenous to that land, who are not Arabs, that still live under the control and power of the Arab state. So those people who are in Darfur, West Darfur, are being murdered by the same group, RSF, who was the Janjaweed, right? Same group of people. And I'm saying all this to say that you have the United Arab Emirates, and people want to take their trips to the Dubai and all of these, places, right? But these are people who are funding the people who are committing ethnic cleansing in Africa, the people who committed genocide in Africa. And every time I look on social media, turn around, there's some African in America somewhere taking a trip to Dubai. Yo, man, like, we got to really do better. We got to do better. But I just wanted to raise this. I know we don't have a lot of time. But again, it goes back to where people allegiance is. And these people are constantly showing that their allegiance is not with African people. They may be in Africa, they may have investments in Africa, but they don't care about the masses of African people. And so just keeping that in mind. Is there anything you wanted to touch on this?
Yeah, sure. Like you're saying, just like the UN, right? There are many organizations from the Middle East there, okay? And they are in Africa working under the umbrella of the United Nations. But they also have their own organization, just like the United Nations, but they just have different names operating under the same umbrella as the United Nations. And whatsoever, how they call it, proceed that they get from exploiting Africa, they also pay percentage to the United Nations because they work under the umbrella of the United Nations. These are the same people, just like the United Nations in DRC Congo, looting and funding the war and looting the people's resources. It is the same way these organizations, these Arab organizations operating under the umbrella of the United Nations, are in Africa. All right? carry on the same war. These people are the same people supporting, along with the UN, along with the imperialist organization or nation, supporting terrorist activities in Africa. That's how these terrorists are getting the weapon. Also, from the same Arab nation who are operating under the umbrella of the United Nations in Africa. I have ISA sources, somebody who worked with them, said, Frank, if you see the amount of money that is being put in, even 0.5% of that is not even going towards Africa. Everything is going towards the organization, people that work and get paid, and the rest go back outside Africa. I was like, he said, look, he was like, the whole thing is business. And he worked with me. The person worked with me and said, it's business. The whole thing is business. This whole thing about the United Nations, this whole thing about humanitarian aid, this whole thing about or UN, or this umbrella UNHCR, UN or WFP, and all of those things, it's all business. At the end of the day, he was telling me that the resources they loot from Africa, from these African nations, and just some of the proceeds, okay, that they use to buy food, to buy aid, and then take it to Africa and then say, we are here to provide humanitarian. We are here to provide aid. It is the same resources that they loot. And it's the same resources that they loot, okay, buy ammunition, and then give it to the rebel or to the terrorists in order to continue the instability in those nations in Africa. And I was shocked. And I mean, he was like, it's all business. Okay, so that is why these people are on the African continent, okay, are in these nations, carry on this war. All right. The issue here, you see what's going on in Gaza right now, or what's going on in Palestine with Israel, where Israel, I mean, they have said they want to take this land. I can tell you for sure, it is in the same way the West, the imperialists, actually want to take Africa. But the issue here is for them to just come out, okay, to directly fight Africa themselves, it's going to be a hard task. But how are they doing it? To create instability into these nations on the African continent by providing ammunition to the same people they call terrorists, the same people they call rebel, and supporting them, giving them treatment, giving them medical supply. That is what they are on the African continent for.
That's a fact. I mean, they have an economic interest, and right here, as you can see, and I talked about this probably a year or so ago. But in light of this story, I wanted to bring it back. Dubai, the business capital of Africa, a growing number of African-focused companies are basing themselves in the Emirate, right? So this is the headquarters of, the major corporations, multinational corporations and companies in Africa. They are setting up their headquarters in Dubai. They have been doing it, for years. And so, again, we have to look at, who's really for the development and interests of African people and who isn't, who's there just to exploit Africa for its vast, resources, amount of resources. So we're going to move on. This is the weekly roundup. We're going to wrap this up and go into the book, Set the World on Fire. We're going to read the chapter 4, Dreaming of Liberia. 1 second. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, tapping in. You on tomorrow, right, Frank? At 1 p.m. I want to let the people know real quick while I pull this up what you got going on.
Tomorrow, 1 p.m., we're going to be on. As you all know, I've been having issues with my computer. My computer was kind of hijacked. So I have to take it, somewhere for checking it out. And then even when I'm using webcam, I'm not even using the camera. So they have to reinstall another software. They have to update it with Windows 11. So the other software out there was all hijacked and damaged. So I couldn't even really do anything. That's why you couldn't even hear me. But however, we made it possible. Still, I'm using a webcam at least, so we install different software. That's what I'm using right now. So tomorrow we're gonna be back.
Yeah, I would be nervous, man, using that computer. But
I'm telling
yeah,
you, because I don't even know. I don't even know what it did. Even with the Windows 11, I don't know what it did to it because
yeah.
it could
Hey,
be.
we gotta
It could
push
be.
through. We gotta push through. That's crazy though, man. All right,
I'm,
chapter 4, dreaming,
I'm gonna
dreaming
change
of
it.
Liberia. I know Frank, you should come with some fire, man. Come with some fire on this topic. All right, so I'm gonna get right into it. Dreaming of Liberia. I put the link to the book in in the chat, so you can click on that and follow along that way as well, and you have it for your own archives. So while activists in the peace movement of Ethiopia, PME, were working to expand the organization's influence in the United States, they were also attempting to extend their global reach and strengthen their diasporic networks and collaborations. Central to the organization's mission was a commitment to Black immigration to West Africa as a step toward improving social conditions for African Americans and uniting Black men and women throughout the diaspora. From the late 1930s onward, PME activists across the country amplified their transnational activism and deepened their internationalist focus. In a 1938 letter to Mississippi Senator Theodore G. Bilbo, the outspoken white supremacist and ardent separatist who had found common cause with the PME, Florence Kina, a PME member in Chicago, praised the senator for his efforts to advance Black immigration to Liberia. I have read an article in the newspaper she wrote pertaining to your request to this government to raise money to send all people of African descent back to their home in Africa to, to inhabit our motherland. I congratulate you, she continued, and I do hope that your determination for this program will never cease until the millions of sons and daughters of Africa be sent back home to serve our God and our Maker under our own vine and fig tree. Keena's letter to support was one of the many that arrived on Senator Bilbo's desk from Black nationalists across the country during the late 1930s. These men and women lauded the senator's efforts to pass the Greater Liberia Bill, dubbed the Back to Africa Bill, which called for millions of dollars in federal aid to relocate African Americans to Liberia and surrounding territories. Arguing that racial separatism would improve the lives of both blacks and whites, Bilbo called on his colleagues in the Senate to back the bill. Civil rights leaders across the country vehemently opposed the bill, arguing that as citizens of the United States, Black people had no business relocating elsewhere. These people want to be American so bad, man. While many race leaders openly denounced the bill and its controversial author, Black nationalist men and women found it to be a glimmer of hope. Amid the social and political upheavals of the period, Bilbo's controversial Greater Liberia Bill stirred long held nationalist aspirations of establishing an autonomous Black nation state on the African continent. For Black nationalists like Florence Keenan, the Greater Liberia Bill represented a viable step toward improving the social conditions of Black men and women in a world deeply divided by the color line. In Keenan's political vision, Black immigration would serve a twofold purpose: to provide a means for Black men and women to escape their second class citizenship status in the United States and to increase their political power on a global scale. The Greater Liberia Bill then was a welcome proposition for Black nationalists who maintained this point of view. I can stop there for a second in case there's anything to build on. Uh, I'm really just I made a comment because I just think about how Africans in America that came by way of slave ship. Just I don't know. It's just like this desire to merge with the system of oppression and exploitation, to merge with our captives and enslavers. Um, like it's a serious problem for me. I don't know. Like, I guess it's just the way that I view our situation in America and view our history. with these colonizers and view the development of America and what America continues to do as it pertains to blacks in this country and around the world. Like, I have a serious issue with that. And I think that the goal, for one, I think we need to view ourselves as a nation, within this nation, a captive nation. And so I'm with Malcolm X. I'm with Dr. Amoson Wilson. I'm with Marcus Garvey, and many others who view ourselves as a nation. And so as a nation, our objective should be wanting to be sovereign, independent, and not under the, someone else's government, and not necessarily the land. Let's take the land out of it right now and just look at government, to be under someone else's government, because that's what we are. We are under someone else's government. We didn't build, found or establish the United States of America. We didn't establish the United States of America. We didn't establish the Constitution. So this is someone else's government. Now, we've been made a part of this government, but still placed in a particular position. So there's a lot I could say about this, but I just wanted to raise it because of, just reading this. It just made me think about how these civil rights leaders, were vehemently opposed to Black people being separate and independent and having a nation of their own. And we're still, here we are in 2023, and we're still suffering as a result of being under this of government. And I don't care how many millionaires we have, overall, Black people are still representing a colonized nation. But Frank,
the issue of Liberia is just one of those things. When you are talking about it, you have to actually understand the history. First of all, you have to understand the reason for why African people were taken. First of all, we're taken from here back to Africa. Once you understand that reason, you'll get to know that Liberia was never a free state, was never an independent nation, was never an independent country. And let me just say this before I can even dive into what I want to say. The reason why Liberia became a so-called independent in 1847 was for this. Around that time, we're talking about World War II, and around that time, we're talking about the Great Depression. And around that time, we are talking about nations were facing financial difficulty. And the United States could not afford at that time to take care of Liberia, to maintain Liberia, all right, as she did before 1847, because America owned Liberia in 1822, all right? So the reason why they forced Liberia to gain independence in 1847, it was because if not, the rest of the colonizer like France, because France was right in Guinea, France was right in Africa, and Great Britain was right in Sierra Leone. Now, these people border surround Liberia, all right? And at that time, America could not afford, because America's sponsor, America had been spending money from 1822 to 1847, all right? And during that time period, we had two governors, Judy Ashman and Thomas Buchanan. That's the first thing. Now, how will you say you took people from here and took them to Africa for them to be free, but you took them to Africa for them to be free, for them to rule themselves, then you made white men, another colonizer, the governor, the president, the leader for them? Is that freedom? Now understand that. So that back forward. Now, at that time, Judy Ashman has died. Thomas Buchanan has died. All right. So they could not have afforded to send another white man to come in Africa. So the finance was not there. So they forced Liberia to get independent, because if not, right, Great Britain will come and take Liberia because it's not an independent nation, or France from Africa or from Guinea will come and take Liberia because it's not an independent nation. These are for facts. Today, they are part of Liberia that is in Guinea today, that is part of Guinea. They are part of Liberia that is part of Ivory Coast. And it was during that time period, America saw it that the only way we can gain our colony or we can gain part of this piece of land, we have to declare independent. And once we declare independent, then it will stop France and England from taking this land. Even as that, when they declare it, France agreed, Great Britain agreed because they have already taken part of Liberia. Now, America did not agree. America did not agree on the independence because why? It was already planned. That's why America did not agree, because it was America that still controlled the colony. It was America that still controlled Liberia. So when they say Liberia was funded as a place to carry free slaves, I have come to understand, I have come to research to prove that that was not the case. Liberia was not a place funded to take African American or free slave from here. Liberia was funded as a settlers colony to help the United States to maintain that colony in Africa, because America could not have afford to send a lot of white people on the African continent, a lot of white people among black people. Do you know what that means? So in order to control black people, among black people, you have to use black people. So the slave that they took from here, they used them. If that was the case, Liberia was funded to carry free slaves. Why in 1924, when Marco Garvey decided to move to Liberia, to make Liberia the capital city for the independence of Africa, they burned Marco Garvey. And that's how they destroyed the UNIA, because of the plan of Marco Garvey. It was not the African American or the African that was in Liberia that stopped Marco Garvey from going to Liberia. It was the United States government, because the United States government controlled Liberia at that time. And some of the people that were in Liberia, in the government, who did not agree, okay, for the United States to ban Marco Garvey, all right? What they did, they stood up. They said, Marco Garvey have to come, because this is a land of black people. So Marco Garvey and the UNA have to come. What did they do? The United States government banned those people in Liberia. They seen African American now, because we're speaking history here. They banned those people from taking part in political affairs in Liberia, and then they gave them hostage environment. Some of those people fled. They went to Sierra Leone, they went to Ethiopia, and a few people that left there to become the host Negro, they were the one that maintained the style code of how they call it, of a settlers colony. And that's how Marco Garvey was unable to go, or the UNIA representative that should have went to Liberia in 1924, and that's how the FBI, J.A. Hugo, lied on Marco Garvey. And they sentenced him, they gave him fraud. They said he committed fraud whatsoever, and that's how they dissolved it. And that's how the UNI was not able to go to Liberia. So if Liberia was funded as a place to carry free slaves, where Marco Garvey now free slave, where the UNI now free slave, where those people now free slave to go enjoy that land, to go in Africa, to settle there. So Liberia have been a colony until 1962, before America even tried to recognize the independence of Liberia. Now, she recognized it not because she wanted to recognize it. She already knew that she had grit. She already knew that she had control. And that's how Liberia is a poor nation today, because the colonizer went in there. They continue to exploit the resources today. America have one of the largest reserves of iron ore in the world that they looted and stole from Africa. That's how a settler's colony is. That's how a colony is. Okay, they do their resources, and the people in our area do not benefit from it. So that's the history of Liberia. And today, we are still weeping and suffering from that legacy of the settlers' colony in Liberia. When people say Liberia was not a colony, I defy them. I tell them, go and do research and go and define what a colony is. Liberia was a colony. Just because she gained shame independent 1847, that does not mean she was not a colony, because in 1884, that's the time when they divided Africa. But 1847, Liberia have already gained independence from 1847 to 1884. Like I said, they did that because America could not have afford to lose it. If not, Europe today, America could have been, Liberia could have been part of Sierra Leone or under Great Britain, or under France, which will be part of Guinea, or Africa, which of course France took part of Liberia coming from Guinea, and then France took part of Liberia coming from Africa. All right, so that's how they forced our nation to gain independence, because America did not want to lose. In fact, history tells us that during that time, America used her navy, because they used the sea coast to travel, use her navy and making announcement, this is the United States territory, and they were threatening France and England. In fact, the United States even took France and England to Switzerland, Geneva, to the United Nations against Liberia. It was not Liberia, it was not the African American, it was US that took those people to the United Nations, advocating for her colony, and said these people have a lot of places in Africa. There's one colony they want to take from us. And the United Nations won our case against France and Great Britain and said, look, US only have one colony in Africa, so leave that era with them. And that's how even Harvey Firestone succeeded in Liberia by having the Firestone plantation that exploited and looted the people. Even as that, with that Firestone plantation, Marco Garvey disagreed for it to be there. But it passed through W.E.B. Du Bois, who said we can integrate among the colonizer. And Garvey said, no, we cannot integrate among the colonizer. We did not integrate among the colonizer in the U.S. So we will not integrate among the colonizer in Africa. When they come and control our resources and control our land, how are we going to integrate? And Marco Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois went into that, and their disagreement, the colonizer went on the side of W.E.B. Du Bois. And then later on, W.E.B. Du Bois was deceived, and he even came out to say, I was deceived. I thought I was making the right decision. W.E.B. regretted to accept the plantation of Firestone in Liberia.
Hey, I knew it was coming, man. I had to sit back, man. I knew this topic, we was about to get that history lesson. Yo, appreciate everything that you laid out. You know, I unite with it. I think like you know, in this next part, I want to get into the idea too of the they're going to talk about in the next couple of paragraphs of these nationalists, African nationalists, Black nationalists, working with these white supremacists, right? Which, of course, we'll look at as a serious contradiction, but I think that there's some logic behind it that we have to like really understand. And so let me get to this. You really laid out that history, man. I don't even know what to add on to that. No need right now. But during this period, a cadre of Black nationalist women leaders, including Mittie Maud Lena Gordon and Ethel Waddell, emerged as key proponents of the Greater Liberia Bill, publicly lobbying for its passage at the local and national levels. Similar to Marcus Garvey, these women leaders were willing to work in tandem with white supremacists on the basis of their mutual interests and racial separatism. Unlike Garvey, however, Black nationalist women during the 1930s relied heavily on the support of white supremacists and played a far more proactive role in fostering these relationships in hopes of attaining their political goals. Through controversial and paradoxical, this decision to collaborate with white supremacists was neither irrational nor haphazard. To the contrary, through these collaborations with seemingly unlikely political allies, Black nationalist women sought to influence the direction of national and global public policy. At the same time, these collaborations were acts of performance that were shaped by historical convention. During the period of Jim Crow segregation and Black disenfranchisement, these women activists were cognizant of their positions as outsiders in a white-dominated and patriarchal society. As such, they envision alliances with influential white male supremacists as a means to bolster their cause and secure federal legislation to improve conditions for Blacks in the United States and across the African diaspora. An exploration of Black nationalist women's political collaborations with individuals like Senator Bilbo reveals the pragmatic and strategic steps, negotiations, and compromises that activists were willing to make in order to advance Black nationalist and internationalist politics during a global economic crisis. Um, so again, like this is just going to what many people would criticize is this alliance between uh, Black nationalists such as Garvey and these women who were part of the Ethiopian peace movement or organization, uh, their association or alliance with these white supremacists to get certain policies and legislation passed for the objective of creating an African nation, an independent nation. And we understand the supremacists, their objective is that they wanted to make the United States of America like a white nation, but like a completely controlled white nation, and wanted to get rid of the African population, right? And there was many Africans in this country who felt that we have the history here, and this land is just as much as theirs than the European, which this is Native American, indigenous people land at the end of the day. But I could see the argument, like this isn't European land, and I'm against giving the European this land anyway, because I think that they are colonizers, and this is a settler colonial state. But I think this movement, though, for immigration and to create an African independent society for Africans in this country should be the objective. And so they were willing to work with these nationalists, though their reasonings probably were different. But I think they both agreed that, we can't live under black people. We don't want to live under a white dominated society, and we want a state of our own. And white people just didn't, these races didn't want to live in a society where they had to share uh, the economy and the power with black people. Now, there's a segment though of the white population who would love for African people to stay in this country as a means of oppression and exploitation that helps bolster their power. I think within the global society, the oppression and exploitation of a group of people is always needed under the colonial capitalist state, because it allows those white people to be able to propel themselves or to be able to sit on the pedestal of the oppressed and exploited. That's the history of colonial capitalism. But the point I really want to make here is that Marcus Garvey and many of these black nationalists understood, though, that the white government, whether it was the Ku Klux Klan or those people who were in government, they still represented white supremacy. So sitting down with the Ku Klux Klan in the 20s and the 30s was different, will be different than sitting down with the Ku Klux Klan today, to be honest, as an organization. Because the Ku Klux Klan then they wielded a lot more power as an organization. They had people who were in positions of government. They had people who were in key positions of military, police. Like, they really controlled a lot of key institutions in the United States. So Garvey and them thought like sitting down with them is no different than sitting down with the president and so forth. They all represent the white supremacist, white dominate political, economic society. And so I just wanted to like really quick just share what Malcolm X had said in regards to the difference between the Dixiecrat and the Democrat, because he's speaking to the same contradiction that exists. Yeah, this talk about who sat down with the Ku Klux Klan at this time If you're sitting down with the president of the United States, you're sitting down with the biggest white supremacists in the country. So what does it matter if black people are sitting down with white supremacists in on the Congress, who are members of the Congress, are sitting down with white supremacists who are in Congress, but they have their sheets on. They're one and the same. So let me just share my screen really quick. Get into this. I'm just going to play 2 minutes of this clip right here because I think that it is. Oh, where is it? Did I lose it? I think I closed the screen, man. Did you want to add anything really quick? I know we at the top of the hour, but I closed the screen. You want to add anything, Frank?
I mean, the only thing to add, the history of Liberia, we can go into it on and on and on, but we will make our people.
We're gonna do a whole podcast on that one right there. You dropped a lot of stuff. I think the point too you were making as far as like Liberia, always being the colonial state, it was never like an independent African nation, right?
No.
As they would have us believe. No. Before form. As a matter of fact, when did Liberia formally gain its independence? If you want to,
1847, quote unquote, 1847. Is that independent?
1847.
And first of all, listen. You see, the whole thing here is the first. So they went with their governmental system from the U.S. Okay, and then they established their government. The United States Congress went and established a government in Liberia, or in Africa today, Liberia, and they used Judy Ashman, another white man. So they actually settled, they established their governmental system, and then they knew who to put in place actually before leaving, because they knew that the people that they were going to put in place, they trusted those people because they already sifted like-minded Africans, okay, who was going to fight the system. They sifted them. They made it possible for those people to leave the country, and they fled. They went to Sierra Leone, they went to Egypt, Ethiopia at that time, because that was a safe place for them at that time. Those people fled. They seen African American that left from here as a slave because they said Liberia was land funded for slave. But you torture those people to the extent you make them to flee the nation and went to different places for refuge. Because at that time, they have already established their white governmental system. So after Judy Ashman, all right, then they brought in Thomas Buchanan. Thomas Buchanan was a relative to James Monroe. Okay.
Talking about the Monroe Doctrine, dude.
Yes. A relative to James Monroe. So they brought in Thomas Buchanan. And then after Thomas Buchanan served and he died, then what they did, the American government then handpicked Joseph Jenkins Robert, who served under Thomas Buchanan as the first president. Is that independent?
No, like you made some points earlier too, as far as the African Americans, like they were being used. If you look at the history of the Africans coming from the Americas who were going over to Africa, they were being trained to actually indoctrinate the African people into the global system, to be a part. This is the spread. This is what I'm talking about, like this system of colonial capitalism needing to spread and take over lands and people. They use the Africans because they look like they were descendants. These are the same people. I mean, the same people. So
and they sent them. I'm not even cutting up. At that time, what they did? It was not just how they call it to say we're just carrying African. They were carrying African who were mulatto. Yeah, they were actually carrying African who were mulatto. That is to say, their offspring. Those are the kind of African they were taking actually to Africa, and those are the kind of African that they put in position of power in Liberia. The mulatto one, because when they got there, they saw themselves, as Westerner. They didn't see themselves as actually black. And that's how today, when you hear the term American Liberian, this is where those things, how they call it, came from. But the issue here is, even before the migration, or even before the ACS, the so-called American Colonization Society went to Liberia, and there was a reason, in fact, it was called the ACS. Okay, because ACS was never in the picture. The ACS came in the picture literally at the end, after the United States Department or Congress have decided, okay, that these African Americans were not useful. They were not contributing to the American economy, because the African actually they took to Liberia were people who have played cool against not Thomas, but James Maroon after Haiti riot 1804. And people in Virginia began to rise up and say, we can do the same thing Haiti did in Haiti. The Haitian did in Haiti, we can do the same thing. Now, after Congress decided about 6 months where to carry these people, and they slaughter all the leader who planned the coup against James Maroon at that time. They slaughtered the leader. It was some of the followers that they actually took to Liberia. And before they did that, some of the mulatto, or how they call it, a slave, they took them and they put them in position of power. After Thomas Buchanan, how they call it, Judy Ashman left, and then they put in Thomas Buchanan. And then after Thomas Buchanan, then now the government was solid based on American principle, based on American or Congress or Washington, D.C. doctrine. Then now they decided to put in their own government, James Maroon. But before that time, there were other migration taking place from the United States, from Europe to Africa. Why did those people did not go and create settlers colony in other parts of Africa? Because it was not just people that left from here by the ACS that went to Liberia. It was other people who also went to Africa. But those people that went, they went with an African mindset, because they were being carried by people such as David Ibi, how they call it, Marco Garvey. There were other people just like Marco Garvey. There was other people who were also carrying African back on the African continent, but with an African mindset. Okay? With an African mindset, and telling them that we cannot go to the African continent with an European mindset. So people were already migrating to Africa. Those people did not take part in a settlers colonialism or in a settlers colony, but the people that left from here, they were actually trained, they were actually intimidated to go against their brothers and sisters. So Liberia was not a place created to carry free American slaves. It's just a trend to make the colonizer to look good.
Yeah. No, just to build on which you're saying, because I want to add on to that, just to give an even clearer picture of this history, right? Because you mentioned there was already Africans in the Americas who were migrating. As a matter of fact, like Sierra Leone was established before Liberia. Sierra Leone, you go back to like Freetown. No, we're talking about 17. You had the Providence of Freedom. You can go all the way back to like 17, 80, 87, 88. Freetown came around in like 1791, but there was Africans who were conscious. They were aware of Sierra Leone and Freetown, and so you already had Africans who were coming from those who were fought in the American Revolutionary War, who was in Canada, Maroons, all of these, those Africans who were in Europe. All of those people had already migrated, and they already were setting up these colonies in what we know as Sierra Leone. So the Africans in America, those quote unquote, I say free, but they weren't really free. It was, second class citizens. But those people who weren't like enslaved on the plantation, those people who had like relative freedom, they knew about Sierra Leone. And so they were organizing. You had African mutual aid societies or that were in Rhode Island that were organizing Africans to go back to Africa. We're talking about in the 1700s. Paul Cuffey, he came around. This is before Liberia. He was going to Africa, trying to set up trade with Jamaica, Africa. You had Lot Carey, Daniel Coker. You can look at some of these people. They began going over there and setting up, attempting to set up settlements. Uh, the other thing, as far as like the rebellions that was going on, you're right. So, Gabriel Prosser, we should have learned about some of these in school, but we don't really get deep into it. But Gabriel Prosser was 1800. Demarc Vesey, or VC, was around the time that we're talking about when you're talking about James Monroe. Demarc Vesey, and somebody can look up the exact date. I think that was 1821 or something like that, or 1822. But this is around the same time. David Walker's Appeal came out in around 1829, 1830. Nat Turner is like 1831. So we're talking about the resistance and the rebellion. And you mentioned Haiti. Haiti is inspiring all of this. So all of this is happening. And when we talk about the mulatto population, and they weren't just free mulattoes, but the free population did represent. There was a large population of what they call mulatto, right? Who may have been the sons and daughters of plantation owners who forced themselves upon African people, right, and had these children, and may have, because of this relationship, these ties, right, kinship ties, they may have let them free. And so there was a large population that was looked at as a threat to the plantation economy. So they wanted to get rid of this population. But again, going back to those people who were indoctrinated, because there was definitely people who that wanted to stay here and fight against the slave system and to destroy it. But there were people who also was indoctrinated and miseducated and felt that though the system of slavery was immoral, they identified though with the economic system and thought, hey, we just needed more rights. They believed in the religion that was given to them by the European. They just saw good in the system itself, even though slavery might have been immoral. But these are people who also believed in the idea of Africans being uncivilized and backwards, and that they needed to be westernized and Christianized. So they went to Africa with that mindset of this being a dark continent. And so the European, and there was this alliance. They thought that, Africans could do good for Africa. Africans in America could be good for Africa because they can go over there and educate them, westernize them, and Christianize them, right? This is this evangelistic, movement in Africa that was taking place. So if you look back and look at that history in the 1800s and what was taking place, even the Du Boises, like the Du Boises, you look at some of these African scholars and leaders in America, and you look at their ideas of Africa, the continent, and the people, they spoke in the same language as the colonizer in describing them. Like they also felt that Africa needed to be brought into the modern world and be civilized. So it was a serious contradiction. This is something that we're still fighting to overturn these perceptions and begin to look at it from the African lens and see like these people weren't backwards. They were underdeveloped by the system of colonial capitalism. The European, created a separate system and said, hey, if you don't adjust to this system, then you're backwards. Right. But it's a lot to this. I don't know if you had, so I give you the last thoughts if you wanted to add anything.
No, that's it, man. We can go ahead because I had 11:15. So
yeah, for sure.
We can dig into it, on the next.
We're gonna go into. I know we went over. But this was. Hey, it got hot. So appreciate everybody for tapping in, man. We'll be back next Saturday to continue this topic, and definitely tune into Frank tomorrow at 1:00 as he does his Sunday podcast. Again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Until next time, man. Peace, power. Have a revolutionary day.